How could Tu Youyou deceive the Nobel Prize and the Lasker Foundation Award in Medicine? Lecture 5 continued. Crystal Huanghaosu showed its remarkable efficacy against malaria in more than 2,000 cases. However, Tu Youyou forcibly changed its name to Qinghaosu through Ministry of Health in order to rob this historic achievement. Any invention of new drug must be through the big amount of successful clinical trials. In the end of 1973, 523 project teams had produced 3 crystals. They were: number 1, Qinghaosu 2, produced by Beijing team; number 2, Huanghaosu, produced by Yunnan team; number 3, Huanghaosu, produced by Shandong team. Which one could be the true Artemisinin? That would depend on the clinical trials. From February 28 to March 1, 1974, the 523 Project Office held a special conference at the Academy of Chinese Traditional Medicine Sciences. Only 3 teams from Beijing, Shandong, and Yunnan attended. The 523 Project Office scheduled to launch a joint antimalaria clinical trials of 3 teams in 1974, which required at least 150 cases totally, and no less than 50 falciparum cases. All teams should report their trial results to the headquarters before November. There were 3 different crystals from different teams. The 523 Project Office wanted to use this trial to check which crystal could be the new anti-malaria drug. These joint trials also give Tu Youyou a new chance to reprove his Qinghaosu 2 crystal was not cardiotoxic. However, the joint clinical trials were not going very well. In May and October 1974, the Shandong team collected 19 Vivax cases in Shandong region. Although all cases was successfully cured by using Huanghaosu, however, there was no falciparum case in the trial report. From September to October 1974, the Yunnan team went to Yunnan, Yun County, only collected 3 cases with 1 falciparum case. Although all cases were successfully cured by using Huanghaosu, however, this sample was too small and far away from the original requirement of 523 Project Office. The even worse was that Tu Youyou's team could not produce any more crystal Qinghaosu 2 in 1974. They only produced 1 gram crystal from 10,000 genes of medicinal Qinghao. Then a fierce dispute broke out between Tu Youyou and Mr. Meng, who was in charge crystal producing. Mr. Meng doubted Tu Youyou's whole extraction theory, from source to the solvent. Mr. Meng even wanted to switch to the Yunnan's gasoline method and Yuyan's Artemisinin, but Tu Youyou rejected. Because still no progress in September, then Tu Youyou had to notice 523 Project Office that her team would withdraw from the joint clinical trials. Tu Youyou teams withdrew from joint clinical trial made the 523 Project Office lost confidence on Tu Youyou's crystal Qinghaosu 2. However, other two crystals looked good, which cured all patients and showed no toxicity. They just need more cases to prove them. Therefore, the 523 Project Office leader, Mr. Zhang, flew to Yunnan immediately to search more malaria cases. By chance, Mr. Fu carried Huanghaosu tablets looking for more malaria cases in Yunnan too. Then, under the 523 Project Office executive order, all Huanghaosu tablets were given to Dr. Li Guoqiao for a new clinical trial. From November 1974 to January 1975, Li Guoqiao's clinical trial achieved great success. All 18 malaria patients, including 14 falciparum cases, were cured by Huanghaosu. More importantly, there was no side effect of heart disease during the trial. That also proved the cardiotoxicity of Tu Youyou team's Qinghaosu 2 was because of the impurity of the crystal. After the clinical trial, Li Guoqiao submitted a report summary of 18 malaria cases treated by Huanghaosu to 523 Project headquarters. This summary announced the birth of artemisinin and was a milestone in the discovery of artemisinin. This is the summary of 18 malaria cases treated by Huanghaosu. Totally, it has 6 pages. Besides the regular efficacy against malaria, there were 2 significant achievements in this summary. Now let's look at page 6. It is the plasmodium killing speed comparison between Huanghaosu and chloroquine. In the graph, we can see the red lines is declining much faster than the blue lines. That means the plasmodium killing speed of Huanghaosu is much faster than chloroquine. The second significant achievement was to use nasal cannula feeding drug Huanghaosu, rescuing 3 brain-type dangerous malaria patients. Particularly, one of them was a pregnant woman in coma, and her fetus was already dead. Moreover, all those 3 patients had been treated by chloroquine before but failed. The details can be read in page 4, section 5 in the right picture. On page 5, we can see the joint authors of this summary. The first was Yunnan Institute Material of Medical. The second was Guangzhou Chinese Medical College. The Yunnan Institute produced the drug Huanghaosu for the trial, and the Guangzhou Medical College took charge of the whole clinical trial. This was a solid evidence, proved that such remarkable clinical trial had nothing to do with Tu Youyou and her team. She just was a dessert from antimalaria battle. In April 1974, the 523 Project Office held a conference entitled Research on Herbal Medicine in Chengdu. More than 70 people from major state departments of China attended the conference. All 523 teams were invited, but Tu Youyou did not come to the conference. On the conference, Li Guoqiao made a report of summary of 18 cases. Wei Zhengxin made a report of 19 Vivax cases treated by Huanghaosu. Luo Ziyuan made a presentation of how to produce Huanghaosu by gasoline solvent method. At last, Huanghaosu was officially declared as a new anti-malaria drug on the conference. To develop a new drug, 18 cases clinical trial was certainly not enough. Therefore, 510 Project Office arranged the National Joint Antimalaria Clinical Trials in the end of the conference, which required each 523 team to treat malaria cases in the cooperative province by using Huanghaosu and to eliminate the malaria disease from China in the shortest possible time. After the conference, many teams went to Yunnan Institute of Material Medic to learn the gasoline solvent method to produce Huanghaosu for the future anti-malaria clinical trials. After Chengdu Conference, Liu Jingming, the director of Beijing Institute of Traditional Chinese Medicine, went to Yunnan to study the gasoline solvent method to produce Huanghaosu crystal for the future clinical trials. Moreover, on the way return to Beijing, Liu Jingming took a detour to Sichuan province, purchasing 500 jin, roughly 500 pounds of Yuyan's Artemisia annua for the future extraction. 510 Project was a military mission, and every member was a paramilitary personnel. Therefore, withdrawal from a battle plan pre-designed by 523 headquarters was a very serious military violation. Therefore, Tu Youyou was deprived from the leadership of anti-malaria team after withdrawal from clinical trial in 1974. That was why Liu could completely abandon to the ether extraction method. Moreover, Liu realized that using the commercial medicinal Qinghao as extraction source was a mistake too, and switched to Yuyan's Artemisia annua. Therefore, Tu Youyou's crystal Qinghaosu 2 was officially passed away after June 1975. In the Wikipedia website, we can read that Tu Youyou's ether neutralization method was completely thrown away and replaced by gasoline solvent method in Beijing Institute of Traditional Medicine after June 1975. The following is a Chinese description of this historic fact from Wikipedia website and its English translation. To meet increasing demand of Huanghaosu for the anti-malaria campaign, Kunming Pharmaceutical Factory built the world's first Huanghaosu production line in November 1975, based on the gasoline solvent method and Yuyan's Artemisia annua. Soon later, in the beginning of 1976, Guilin Pharmaceutical Factory built the second Huanghaosu production line in China, based on the modified gasoline method and Guangxi's Artemisia annua, which was as good as Yuyan's Artemisia annua. In January 1976, an outbreak of falciparum malaria occurred in Cambodia. The Cambodian government seeking emergency help from China. Then China sent a medical team consisting of 510 Project members because the Huanghaosu production lines were not ready. Then the Shandong and Yunnan teams had to produce Huanghaosu by using the laboratory equipment and made Huanghaosu tablets, capsules, and injections for the medical usage. With Huanghaosu as a weapon, the malaria epidemic in Cambodia was quickly suppressed in 2 weeks. When the Cambodian people life on the line, where was Tu Youyou's so-called Artemisinin? According to the statistics, after 3 years National Joint Antimalaria Clinical Trials campaign, the new drug Huanghaosu totally had treated 2,099 malaria cases, including 588 falciparum malaria cases in China and Southeast Asian countries. Both the temperature normalized time and the parasites turning to negative times were faster than chloroquine, particularly for the 143 falciparum malaria cases that failed chloroquine treatment but was successfully cured by using Huanghaosu. Such data fully proved that Huanghaosu was a strong and faster new anti-malaria drug than chloroquine. In November 1978, China Ministry of Health, Commission of Science and Technology, 523 Project Office, held a new anti-malaria drug evaluation conference in Yangzhou. Huanghaosu was officially crowned as the new anti-malaria drug, Artemisinin. However, the China Ministry of Health wanted to change its Chinese name to Qinghaosu. Why to change? If Huanghaosu was failed, then the minister would certainly not care its name. That was like a successful rich family was easily chosen as a robbery target. On November 26, 1978, Guoqiao, the China Vice Minister of Health Department, hosted a meeting to discuss the issue to change the Chinese name of Artemisinin from Huanghaosu to Qinghaosu. Almost all 523 project members in the meeting opposed the name change. The Shanghai delegation said, according to the international nomenclature, the name of the medicine must be consistent with the source name. Change to Qinghaosu was violated this rule. He also said, we must respect the scientific rule and the historical reality in the name issue. Tu Youyou politicized the name issue and said our ancestors recorded that Qinghao can cure malaria 1,000 years ago. It would be disrespectful to our ancestors if not keep the word Qinghao in the name. However, Shandong delegation criticized Tu Youyou tried to steer the contribution of Artemisinin by the naming. He said, I just worried about that Tu Youyou could claim that she had obtained Artemisinin by using the name confusion 20 years later. When the debate became furious, the host stopped the meeting. 1 month later, the China Ministry of Health assigned an executive order to name Artemisinin as Qinghaosu. This was an example that politics interfere the science in China. Now we have a conditional question. What if the Chinese name of Artemisinin was still called Huanghaosu? Then to you will be impossible to win the Lasker Award and Nobel Prize in Medicine. Look at the Lasker Award paper, Artemisinin Therapy for Malaria. The editor wrote, on November 8, 1972, she and her colleagues obtained the pure substance. They named it Qinghaosu, and it is now commonly called Artemisinin in the West. Obviously, the Qinghaosu cannot be called Artemisinin in the West if Artemisinin was still called Huanghaosu. Therefore, Tu's team did not obtain Artemisinin. In the same Lasker Award paper, the editor also wrote, starting in the mid-1970s, Guoqiao performed a clinical trial with artemisinin. The time of Li's clinical trial with Huanghaosu was in the end of 1974. However, the time to change the Chinese name of artemisinin was in December 1978. If the Chinese name of artemisinin was still called Huanghaosu, then Li Guoqiao's monumental clinical trial would have no connection to the Qinghaosu, and Tu Youyou will not get any credit from Li's clinical trial. In the same Lasker Award paper, the editor also wrote, by that point, the China-wide Qinghaosu research group had given the substance to more than 2,000 patients. Obviously, this was about the 3 years joint national antimalarial clinical trial. However, at that time, there did not exist China-wide Qinghaosu research group at all. Tu Youyou's Qinghaosu was dead in 1973's clinical trial. Therefore, no team researched on Qinghaosu before the Huanghaosu was changed the name to Qinghaosu in 1978. More trickily, here use the word the substance. Why not say this substance was Huanghaosu? Certainly, the judges of Lasker Foundation knew nothing about Huanghaosu. It must be Dr. Su's trick that tried to transfer all the credit of Huanghaosu to Tu Youyou. The above not existed China-wide Qinghaosu research group must be created by Dr. Su also, because he wanted to deceive the judges. Those substances must be Qinghaosu. In the same Lasker Award paper, the editor also wrote, many scientists from other institutes then joined efforts to improve the extraction procedure and conduct clinical trials. It was a common sense. If a medicine was failed, then it needed to complete the start all over again, not the improvement. Luo Zeyuan obtained Huanghaosu crystal by using the Guessman method in April 1974. No one can say that Lu's method was an improvement of Tu Youyou's method, only because Tu Youyou failed and Lu Zeyuan succeeded, or Lu's method was simple and Tu Youyou's method was complicated. Dr. Su Xingzhuan must provide the solid evidence to prove that Guessman method was the improvement of Tu Youyou's method. Actually, Tu Youyou's ether neutralization method was garbage and completely thrown away by Chinese scientists and industry. Only the judges of Lasker Award and Nobel Prize were fooled to believe it can be used to produce artemisinin. Now look at the Nobel Prize Committee paper, Artemisinin Revolutionary Therapies against Parasitic Diseases. In this paper, the committee said to develop a purification procedure which renders the active agent artemisinin a drug that is remarkably effective against malaria. How could the Nobel Prize Committee thought that the active agent rendered by Tu Youyou's team was artemisinin? One possible factor was the name. If the Chinese name of artemisinin was still Huanghaosu, then the Nobel Prize Committee would not be so easily cheated by Tu Youyou, because Tu's active agent was called Qinghaosu, not the correct name Huanghaosu. Now we have a question. How many clinical trial cases that Tu's team had conducted by using her Qinghaosu, which was isolated in November 1972? Look at the Lasker Award paper, Artemisinin Therapy for Malaria. The editor wrote, subsequent clinical trials on 529 malaria cases confirmed that the crystal they had isolated delivers the antimalarial blue. The case count 529 was from Tu Youyou's book Qinghao and Derivative Drugs, published in 2009, which was Tu Youyou's supporting material for 2011 Lasker Foundation Award as well as 2015 Nobel Prize. Although Tu Youyou did have 529 cases, however, not all cases used the crystal she isolated. Moreover, some cases are failed, and no antimalarial blue was delivered. Now let's look at Tu Youyou's book Qinghao and Derivative Drugs. In page 43, we can see the following. The last sentence said, the accumulated count of verified clinical cases by Beijing Institute of Traditional Medicine reached 529 before Qinghaosu Appraisal Conference in 1978. There were two differences from previous Lasker Foundation paper. Number one, here use the word verified, not confirmed, because verification could be failed. Number two, here did not mention which drug used for the verification. In page 28 of Tu Youyou's book, Qinghao Antimalaria Research, we can read all those 529 cases year by year. We listed all those cases in the following table. Firstly, 1972 cases was before the crystal isolating time. Therefore, those 30 cases should not be counted. Secondly, there was no cases in 1974 because Tu Youyou's team withdrew from joint clinical trials. Thirdly, after June 1975, Tu Youyou's team switched to use gasoline solvent method to produce crystal, which was equivalent to Huanghaosu, because Tu Youyou changed the crystal for clinical trials. Therefore, all cases from 1975 to 1977 should not be counted either. Therefore, Tu Youyou team's crystal isolated in November 8, 1972 only had 8 clinical trial cases in 1973. We already talked about those 8 cases in Lecture 4. 3 Vivax cases were effective. 2 falciparum cases were ineffective. 2 falciparum cases were terminated because of cardiotoxic side effects. Only 1 falciparum case was effective, but the parasites reappeared in day 6. No one could imagine such a failed medicine could win both the Lasker Award and the Nobel Prize. Tu Youyou's cheating trick was the classical imposting and replacing. However, if without the assistance of Dr. Su Xingzhuan, Tu Youyou could not successfully deceive all the judges of Lasker Award and Nobel Prize. We appeal the Lasker Foundation
and Nobel Prize Committee
to conduct a complete investigation on whether the Huanghaosu had the remarkable efficacy against malaria in 2,099 clinical cases from 1975 to 1978. Moreover, whether the Chinese name of Artemisinin was changed from Huanghaosu to the current name Qinghaosu by Chinese health government. If all investigations are yes, please withdraw Tu Youyou's Lasker Award and Nobel Prize, because her crystal was not Artemisinin. More Tu Youyou's cheating material will come later. Bye-bye.